Immediate right, who is a speech coach. Well, of course, the week has, as always, provided quite an interesting view of politicians. Let's begin tonight with Martha Karua. She was in Eldoret this week, and rather than speaking about her manifesto or her grand plans for Kenyans, she instead chose to appeal to her brand of common sense. Listen in.
Wawili hao wewe jiulize, wakipewa siku moja, na tumeona wakipewa siku moja hapo awali, wafuatane kule ng'ambo. Kenya ni duka, tufunge wiki moja ndugu zangu. Nikuuliza tu, wewe imagine tukifunga siku moja au wiki moja tuangojee. Mimi sina ubaya na mtu wowote, lakini lazima tuelezee ile mitego iko. Kama mtu ako na mzigo, hata wewe ukimwajiri utamwambia tulia, umalize hiyo mambo alafu urudi, hata kama unampenda. Na mimi nafananisha, nyinyi ni watu wa mfumo. Si wakati mwingine unafunga ng'ombe yako inabeba. Hapa mko na gari, mnafunga ng'ombe au hamfungi? Mnafunga. Basi kama unafunga, ikivunjika mguu unaweza ifunga gari tena. Si unangojea ipone? Sababu ni ng'ombe yako na unaipenda. Na hawa ndugu zetu kama tunawapenda, ni kuwapumzisha mpaka wamalize hii maneno, ndivyo wapate nafasi ya kutosha ya kujitetea. Alafu uangalie wale wamebaki, na wale wamebaki hatuombi kura mtupatie bila kutukagua.
She was speaking in the Rift Valley and certainly playing to the tune of the emotions of the area residents who may be sympathetic of the plight of their son, William Ruto, joined in the coalition with Uhuru Kenyatta over the ICC issue. Paul.
Martha Karua is a direct communicator. You know, she doesn't know how to hide her emotions. She'll say it the way it is. She doesn't sugarcoat. I think she's testing. In my view, she's testing her talking points for the upcoming debates. And I think she'll thrive really good in the debates. She seems not to really connect a lot with a wider audience. She doesn't seem to do really good with big rallies. But I do believe that in the upcoming debates, she'll probably perform really good. That's what I think about Martha.
I think in a political sense, Martha Karua is raising a fundamental constitutional problem. She knows that the constitution that we have really raises a number of questions with regard to candidates who have integrity issues to settle. And if our courts had settled this matter early, Martha Karua would not be raising this. So she's in fact in her desperation saying that the legal institutions that should have sorted out this issue of people who are supposed to go to The Hague have not followed the right procedure. They have not done well, and we're now going to an election with the two candidates who are accused of international crimes. And because of that, that is the desperation she has. So she's communicating directly that even if you don't want to touch this matter, it is going to catch up with us very soon. Whether it's going to be done on the 6th of this month or not, or later, it's going to catch up with us, and somebody has to be reminded the implications of voting the two gentlemen into power, and then they go to The Hague to deal with their cases.
Yes, and certainly, let me just put this into context. Of course, that bench has already been constituted by the Chief Justice, a five-man bench, and should begin hearing it somewhere around the 6th, I believe.
It has taken too long.
Well, we'll see what the courts have to say. Derek.
She's got nothing to lose, but I looked at her, and it's very interesting that the image that she's portraying is much softer. She's talking about this issue, and Paul mentioned it being a little bit emotional. I think you did yourself. You can even see the way her voice goes. She's not as strident. She's talking about a very serious matter, but I think she's appealing to a certain constituency, whether it is women, whether it is people from a particular area. I think this is a very smart move on her part, and she's got nothing to lose.
Going forward, do you think it is a convincing proposition, or is Martha Karua just continuing with the sort of decline in her enthusiasm for this race, where she initially used to sell herself, the brand Martha, you know, look how far I've come, and you know, her track record, no corruption issues or anything like that, but now really being left with an almost desperate pitch that just does the finger pointing.
I think she's realized that she doesn't need to play the same as the other boys. She needs to focus on her strengths. her strength as a woman, a strength of bringing in some of these qualities that a woman has, emotional intelligence, you know what I'm saying? And so I think this is actually a smart ploy on her side. And as Paul said, this will be interesting to watch during the debate, whether she uses this kind of tone and this kind of softer image to be able to present herself.
Go ahead.
And I don't think that this matter is about gender and her strength as a woman. She's a citizen, very intelligent person, as you know, she's a lawyer. What she's saying is that, look, why would you reject me? I've totally no charges against my name. And then you are choosing people, you seem to be enthused by people who have charges of having committed crimes
but Professor,
against
surely the fact
humanity.
that she is a woman and the only woman standing in this race to the presidency is a factor, which also brings into question just the way she's been faring in opinion polls and the kind of tone that she's taking now. What does it say, Paul, as to the reception of Kenyans to the possibility of a female president? Is this country ready or not?
Well, I think we're at a place in this country where it's not really so much about gender. I think what Kenyans are really looking out for is the person who will best be able to project their aspirations as a Kenyan people, someone who will be able to articulate our issues as good as they can get. And if it's Martha, well and good. However, Derek has mentioned something, an interesting perspective, that she's the only woman in a contest of all these men. And I want to try and look at it from the context of the upcoming debates. It poses quite an interesting opportunity for her. She could perform really good, or the men will also have to be extremely cautious as not to appear condescending. The women who will be watching her will want to see Martha treated with a lot of respect in those debates. So I think it's going to be quite interesting.
But let us be very honest with ourselves. Martha Karua's gender does not matter. She's reminding us of a fundamental constitutional problem which people are not looking at, including the supporters of the candidates.
You've mentioned that.
You cannot
Professor, I think you've mentioned that point twice. It's well stated.
Because we are covering up what it is.
No. I think you've mentioned it and it has been heard. Let me just bring in quickly one of the responses, because I did put that question to Uhuru Kenyatta this week as he presented his nomination papers to the IEBC. And he said on the issue of the ICC, whether or not they end up being there for a prolonged period of time, Kenya is not, and I quote, a banana republic, that there are institutions in place that will be able to, ensure proper governance and all of that. But having said that, do you see the ICC factor, Professor, being a major foreign policy shift determiner as far as an Uhuru Ruto presidency is concerned?
Yes, the ICC issue is great. It's a major player in this dispensation. I foresee this, that if Uhuru and Ruto win, there is totally nothing that the West can do on the immediate scene. What it will do is to wait. It will withdraw the donor aid, the support of our balance of payments. Then we shall probably pay a liter of petrol at 600,000. Then there will be probably some discontent from the citizens. And at that point, when the citizens realize what they went into, that is when the international community will come to remind the public that this is what you went in when you are voting for this gentleman. And when that happens, it might be too late.
Or the international community may not actually do anything. We don't know.
But on that particular question that you asked Honorable Uhuru, what I think he needs to do is come up with a satisfactory answer. That wasn't good enough. The debates are coming up. That's a question that he's going to be asked.
He has been asked this question several times.
He needs to come up with a convincing
and I think he has been.
it.
I think he has been able to answer that question well enough. I honestly think that this is something that we need to. It is the elephant in the room. It is the 600-pound gorilla, but it is something that he obviously it is right there for him not to have an answer for that question, or for us to think that he has no plan. I don't know what crystal ball you're looking at there, Professor, in terms of how you foresee
there are two audiences.
But I am sure.
Professor, show us your crystal ball. What are you seeing?
Where this will be taken care of.
There are two audiences you are looking at. Uhuru is, for example, addressing the Kenyan audience. But we also have another audience, the international audience, he doesn't address.
I care about the Kenyan audience because they have the voters.
And he cares so much about the Kenyan audience. But you must know that this Kenyan audience will have to drive vehicles using fuel from Saudi Arabia, bought by what? Dollars from the West and of course the euro. So this is what you look at. So you can't limit it to the Kenyan.
There are serious issues, but we do not know what will happen. So let's not delve too much into it. Let's not speculate too much, although it does make for good conversation.
The community works in a particular way. It's not
Professor,
true.
please. Not too far from Martha Karua's rhetoric this week was Musalia Mudavadi of the Amani Coalition. Listen to his pitch on why you should vote for him come March the 4th.
Sina hasira na mtu yeyote. Siasa yangu haijakuwa siasa ya matusi kwa mtu yeyote. Mimi nataka niunganishe wa Kenya. Wale wako na hasira upande huu na upande huu tuwapoeshe. Hata ukiangalia siasa sasa, kuna mrengo ule wa CORD, kuna mrengo wa Jubilee. Ukweli wa mambo vile wanatazamana kwa kisiasa, wakikutana kwa kona usiku, hatujui nini inaweza fanyika. Kwa hivyo mimi nawaomba watu wa Kabarnet, watu wa Baringo County, kwa sababu tunataka utulivu katika Kenya, mnisaidie niwe rais wa 4 wa Jamhuri ya Kenya, ili nichukue maji baridi nimwagie wale wa CORD, nichukue maji baridi nimwagie wale wa Jubilee, niwapoeshe, temperature ikuje chini, Kenya ishikane, tuende mbele bila kufurutana.
He's the thermostat, he says, of Kenyan politics. Is it a convincing enough argument for you, gentlemen?
It is a dry argument. In fact, if you look at it, you see a guy who has no issues. Yeah, it's just dry. How do you pull down the temperatures of these two groups when these two groups are disagreeing over fundamental issues? How, for example, can he handle the issue of land raised by CORD and, in fact, answered in a particular way by Jubilee by just pouring water to cool down? Do you tell people to cool down even when they are suffering? He has to confront the problem and solve. He's standing in the middle, and that just shows he doesn't have leadership capacity to look after a highly divided country like ours. That maybe he should leave it for CORD and Jubilee to fight it on.
Derek?
I think he's taking the high road, and this is the kind of political maturity that we're talking about. When you are communicating, remember, your audience is not necessarily the people who are at that Kamkunji. There is a wider audience that is looking for somebody who is going to address the issues that this country is facing and be able to communicate that. Now, one of the things I like about that, first of all, he is not addressing that rally with a kofia. So we could see his eyes, and we can see some sort of sincerity and some sort of person who actually cares about the issues of this particular
trivializing. He's trivializing the whole struggle. Kenya has issues to be confronted, and you'll have to disappoint some people and impress others. You must say, I'm going to do this and do that. And when he does it, he will hurt some members of CORD. He will also hurt some members of Jubilee. He can't be pouring water on things that are burning.
One of the fundamental issues, Professor, is that heated temperature, and we get this flack a lot, even as the media. People wondering, are you people, fanning this thing and all of that. So for some people, the fundamental issue is that Kenyans calm down.
What cools the temperatures
and
is the
vote
law.
peacefully.
What cools the temperatures is the law. We can continue fighting, we can continue arguing about things, but this law, we don't believe in the law of the jungle. We know that the law will prevent us from going beyond a certain boundary. So therefore, it is the law to cool down, but let Musalia say he wants to transform Kenya in this particular way. Whether people say this is not right or not, he must tell us his agenda. He should not be standing in the middle to cool one side and cool the other. That is indecisiveness.
Paul, let me come to you, because partly because of his words, and he has been unable to spin his fallout with the Jubilee coalition into this powerful campaign rhetoric that says, you know what, as Derek was saying earlier, I am taking the high road. I was actually a man of my word, and I was jilted by these other guys. Why is that? What is not working?
Musalia's communication style is considerate. He is cool, calm, and collected. It has its advantages in certain contexts, but this is a presidential race. I want to see the fire in his belly coming out. He needs to show us that he's extremely passionate about wanting to be president in this country. I don't see that with Musalia. However, looking ahead, I think that he can play his considerate, cool, calm style, in the debates to his advantage. When things probably might get heated up, I do expect things to get really heated up. He might
Professor,
play
Kenya
the role,
doesn't need a moderate.
he might play the role of calming things down. He might.
What,
you know,
what are you moderating? We also want to see the emotional side of Musalia. When he argues that he doesn't have any hasira with anybody, he's not annoyed with anybody, that is hypocrisy. And then the reason he was complaining about how he was treated by Uhuru Kenyatta, now he's saying he's not annoyed with anybody.
You know,
who is he impressing?
I wouldn't use the word.
Is he impressing?
I wouldn't use the word hypocrisy because he seems to be authentic. You know, he seems to come whether
Do you
it's,
believe
whether
that
it's
he's not annoyed with anybody? Do you believe it?
You know, he seems to be authentic. His words seem to be connecting with
Oh,
his
that was
body
my
language.
direct question. I'm
You
going to
know?
let you on. Let me relieve you of the burden of answering that. But Professor, I wanted to ask this. Do you believe that, you know, Mudavadi, Karua, Kenneth Kiapi, these combined could be, well, not the third force to win the election, but the third force to force a runoff?
Yes, they have the ability to force a runoff because they have some passionate supporters for different reasons. I would rather remove Musalia from Karua and Kiapi because these two, Kiapi, Karua, have been talking more fundamental issues. So therefore, they don't belong to the same league with us as Musalia. So really, I think if you put them together, he's likely to spoil the rating for.
And I think I know where the professor is coming from. You don't have to be controversial to be a good politician in this country. And I think Musalia is showing that, as I said. There is something to be said about being sincere. There is something about, as he says, lowering down the temperatures and really focusing on some of the issues.
Look at his encounter with Uhuru Kenyatta. He signs one agreement which goes to the register of political parties, and then signs another one which he keeps under the pillow, and then starts complaining. Is that the moderation you want, the kind of leader you want in this country? Really, we want a chief executive that has the capacity, has the oomph to move this country forward, whether it's Uhuru or Raila, but they must provide us with the
But interestingly, what his campaign team will tell you is that Mwai Kibaki, while running in 02, had an almost similar style, in that it was that cool, laid back, you know, almost nonchalant kind of demeanor that got him there, and that has made him a rather humorous president.
I don't think Mwai Kibaki can be compared in any way with Musalia. If you look at Mwai Kibaki, he was cool. But when it comes to interrogating issues, the president grasps those issues, and he used to speak with finality over issues of the economy, issues of infrastructure. That is the president. And so he may not have been as forceful, but the president shows an intelligent guy focused on particular things, and that is different from a guy who stands in the middle. Mwai Kibaki never stood in the middle. When he decided that he was forming DP, he went full throttle. When he decided he was supporting Daniel Arap Moi, he did it straight. But look at Musalia. He's trying to become a peacemaker between the CORD and the Jubilee. That is not his job. The job he has is to become the president of Kenya, not to bring peace between two coalitions.
Let's leave it at that and move on to one Raila Odinga. He launched his campaign machinery, if you like, at Uhuru Park. That was after presenting his nomination papers to the IEBC. And he brought back this line from the 2007 campaigns.
Ruto na mpira ametereza ameanguka chini. Wanaendelea kama ile, wanachukuliwa na mpira, wampate Musalia Mudavadi, Mudavadi anaenda na mpira, amerudisha kwa Ruto, nampatia Uhuru Kenyatta na mpira, apiga shot. Goalkeeper Fred Gumo ameudaka bila wasiwasi. Ameshika mpira, amepiga huko juu kule mbele, na mpira imeanguka huko mbele, akapatia Henry Koske. Koske amempatia Babu na Mwamba nena na mpira, amepatia Charles Kilonzo na mpira. Naona amemchenga yule jamaa, anakuja kama ile jamaa anaitwa nani ile? Ameshengwa na Charles Kilonzo. Charles sasa amekata mpira kwa Wetangula.
one cannot deny he does know how to work a crowd.
Classic Raila. But you know, as I was watching that clip, I was watching the body language of the two men on either side of him. So we had Kalonzo on one side and we had Wetangula on one side, and specifically Wetangula. And you could tell in his body language, it was more of, this is more of the same of Raila, but we really want something different. And that to me is actually indicative of a large swathe of the constituency that says we have heard this before. We have heard this story before. We've seen this game being played. Give us something new. And again, if we can sort of pivot to the debate, he's not going to be able to use that kind of language when he's standing there and going to be asked some serious questions about how are you going to change the fortunes of this particular country. So well and good for him, for that particular audience over there, and appealing to a small slice of the electorate. We want bigger and better things, and that's my take. And that you could clearly see that in the body language of the person standing to his right.
I think Wetangula and Kalonzo are his lieutenants. They're playing in the same team, and I don't think they are demanding anything, because that talk by Raila is not meant for Wetangula and Kalonzo. It's actually meant for the audience. And Raila, as you put it, perfect. The French will say is the genial, because he has created a chemistry with his audience. And during those drama days, and we used to, in high school, we used to say, you have recruited the audience on your side, and by the time you finish the play, which is the plot, you have everybody on your side and they're cheering you, and they influence the people who are adjudicating to give you marks. So what he's doing is that he is trying to look for marks from the electorate. He has already won a small section, as you put it, but he can still replay that in Kakamega, he can replay that in Mombasa, and they will walk out and think this guy is a genius. Why don't we try him for
president? But that crowd was carefully picked, because remember, this was after he had presented his nomination papers at KICC. So he knew that he was going to speak to a very select audience who would love that sort of thing. In fact, at one point, he tells the crowd that today there's no Kitandawili, and they boo and boo.
But the symbolism that he has used and the imagery he puts, it really serves him well, even if the crowd was small. But I wonder how you can pick up a huge crowd at the Hoop.
Oh, come on. Professor, we know these things are done. Let's not even go there, Paul.
I mean, he's speaking to his base, but he also uses the analogy of football, which is a game of the people. It's a game of the masses. And he's also quite aware that the African Cup of Nations is ongoing. So I think he's resonating and connecting with his audience. And it's classical Raila, spirited communicator, thrives really good in big crowds. However, like Derek mentioned on the debates, in a controlled format, I would be really keen to see how he's going to perform. And I think he might struggle a little bit. His speech patterns, his speaking style is a bit hesitant. He takes a bit of time to think things through before he can be able to talk, and sometimes this might not be too good for the debates. The only advantage that I think he has as a spirited communicator for the upcoming debates is his ability to tell stories. So that might enable him to connect with a wider audience. If he's able to connect his policy positions, tie them in with his stories during the debate, and hopefully do that in less than a minute.
He mentioned Martha Karua earlier, saying as a direct communicator, one of those who we expect to see perform really well in this debate simply because of her style of speaking. Who else, Derek, if I can just put you on the spot, do you think would naturally thrive very easily in that sort of environment, in a very controlled environment?
Well, I think of the presidential aspirants, we have people who speak very well, like Peter Kenneth. I think even Uhuru. I think that he is going to be well prepared for this particular debate, especially in view of the things that we've been talking about and some of those questions that are inevitably going to be asked. And the ability to be able to answer them now to a wider audience is really going to put to rest a lot of the issues that people are going to be having in his mind. So this is an opportunity for him to answer that question.
Away from them there.
No, but this is an opportunity for him now to answer that question, and for people who may be sitting on the fence to say, okay, fine, we realize this is how this issue is going to be handled. It is not a factor anymore. Let's move forward.
Professor, could I put in a question that I hope you'll tie into what you're about to say? And this is, of course, the first time that Kenya is having this presidential debate, but how far do you think it would at all influence what their performance would influence what is going to happen at the ballot come March the 4th. After all the campaigning, do you actually think what will happen in about another week or so may be a deciding factor for voters?
You see, one hopes that in a debate like that one, you address people who understand the nitty-gritty of the economy and everything, and then they can pass the same message in their vernacular languages and other forums, and pass to the people who necessarily don't watch television. And that is what they hope to do, so that can influence the voters indirectly. But now, where we are in our country, there are so many people who access this media. So the media, the debates could be aired also on television and radio, and people will listen to what was happening. So the candidate who will come out smart is the one who is able to capture the people, what Franz Fanon used to call the wretched of the earth, those who may not really relate too much to these studio things, but they are down there suffering and just toiling. And again, say the same things to the middle class in Kenya, who are able to understand what he's talking about. In that kind of thinking, Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta could be ahead. But in terms of saying how good things should be, Peter Kenneth, addresses the middle class. But generally across the line, the most dangerous candidate there is Mother Karua, because she's really articulate on issues, and she could just...
She's razor sharp,
she's very sharp, and she can trounce all of them.
There's some styles that will thrive in this particular debate format. I think each style has its advantages. There's none that's superior or inferior to the other. I foresee Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga as spirited communicators being able to tell stories, but the question would be, will they be able to tie them into their policy positions? I foresee Peter Kenneth, who's a systematic communicator who seems to have an absolute superior grasp of policy issues, being able to articulate them. The question, though, is, will he be able to connect with an audience that lacks the technical competence that he does have?
Yeah, so because the issues that they will have to address, some of them will be technical. But you've talked about policy issues, and I want to ask you this. There is a feeling that Raila Odinga, being one of the more senior politicians in this race, if not the most, should have made his campaign, the onus was really on him to provide some kind of thought leadership, if nothing more, and make his campaign really issue-based.
I think
that on that he failed. Other than the manifesto launch, we haven't really heard him coming out and saying, this is what I intend to do with the issue of land. What we've heard him say is accuse Uhuru Kenyatta of having these huge swaths of land.
I wouldn't place it squarely on Raila. I would just say that a lot of these other campaigns have also not presented issues to us. I think the campaign that has really come across as issue-based has been Peter Kenneth's campaign from the word go. Martha Karua's campaign also was a lot issue-based, initially. But what we are seeing lately is all these candidates are trying to pivot towards talking about issues, because the Kenyan people are now demanding that we want to hear, we want to hear you talk about issues, we want to hear you articulate things that are important to us. So
let me put in a plug right there, and you want to make sure you're watching KTN tomorrow, because we will be bringing out a show that will be centered on those issues. I just had to plug that in right there.
just one point to add.
Yes.
All the candidates, one of the candidates who will probably emerge leading, I want to mention them. But these guys have things. People like Raila and Mother Karua have a certain sense of humor that Peter Kenneth doesn't have. And if you have a sense of humor in politics, you can crack a joke. You are very lucky. And that's what Mother Karua is.
I'm so glad you've taken that train of thought, because you lead me beautifully into the next point, which is this Jubilee presidential running mate William Ruto. He was on KTN Prime this past week, and when asked about the analog versus digital debate, he upped the ante with this.
The people in that coalition, some of them, I read them in civics when I was in Standard 8. Standard 7, 1980. I was in Standard 7. I was reading about William Timama.
Okay.
And I thought William Timama was in the league of Vasco da Gama. I mean, so who represents status quo, surely? Henry Kosgei, I sang for him when I was in school. He was a minister then. He is still a minister now. I mean, honestly, surely, who represents the status quo and who represents change? Let's be honest.
Yeah, somebody clearly found that funny. Let's not go there.
Let me just respond to that.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing, Anne. William Ruto is telling the nation that age necessarily brings change. This is naive. I think what you need to look at, history disapproves that. When President Ronald Reagan took power in 1980, he was older than Jim Carter. And then he still looked younger in terms of ideas than Carter, who had taken power in 1976 in the United States. Now, again, Nelson Mandela takes power in 1994, but there were so many young people in that country who didn't believe change could come. So what is William Ruto talking about? It baffles me, because I think...
Do you not think that generational change is an important thing, especially for
But it doesn't necessarily translate into good leadership.
No, whether or not it translates to leadership, we're talking about his pros and whether indeed he's addressing an issue that is important for a majority of the population in this country, that they do want to see young minds, because they're saying, you know, tomorrow is supposed to be the day of the youth, and this tomorrow is never coming.
Let me tell you something about Ruto. There is a likability factor there that comes out in that particular interview. Now, one-on-one, I think he does exceptionally well. Well, first of all, let's look at his image. I think he has those presidential aspirations. I mean, he's got a well-fitting suit, he's got an orange tie, which actually, he cleans up good, thank you very much. And there is a youth and a vigor to him that I think Kenyans are looking for in terms of leadership in this country. And he does make a point in terms of the same old, same old. We're looking for somebody who sort of has the energy to take us into the rest of this particular century. So he talks about it, and he also comes across as that particular person.
William Ruto has an ability to transform something that is seemingly insignificant into a compelling narrative, and that's a skill. We must give it up to him. He's able to tell stories. My only issue in that particular, with that particular statement is when you compare, and he draws a really good parallel, you know, of Vasco da Gama to Honorable William Olentimama. I have a problem when you compare, you try to segment or divide the electorate. You're running to be deputy president of both the old, the young. They all have a place in this country. And we must remember something, that William Olentimama and Henry Kosgei, they're elected officials. They've been sent to Nairobi by their constituents. So, you know, we cannot, you cannot really, you can't just disclaim them, you can't just push them aside. They also have a place in this country.
That is an interesting point you make, but Ruto certainly, I'm sure you would agree, has come out as a real asset for Uhuru Kenyatta as the choice, in their running mate choice, as opposed to some of the other fellas that we have seen lined up against, you know, people that you thought would be the third force.
Yeah, this is true. Like, I pity Musalias, for example, running mate. I don't know how many people that Kioni will bring to his table. But look at but I think Uhuru was intelligent. Choosing Ruto was a very good choice, and that is really something that you can like. But the biggest asset of Ruto is that he can turn a big lie into truth.
Wow, Professor.
He will tell you so many stories. You say he has a compelling narrative, and he can tell things.
Why would you pick Ruto to say that his are the lies that are becoming compelling narratives as opposed
look
to
at
anybody else?
Vasco da Gama's thing. Vasco da Gama too at the East African coast in 1495. And you see, it's overstretching your imagination to compare.
It's hyperbole, if you like.
With Vasco da Gama. So he knows how to.
It's not a lie.
He has a way
it's
with
hyperbole.
words. It is his way of expressing himself. I think his personality is coming to bear, and I think, like you said, he is a real asset to Uhuru, and they are a perfect foil for each other.
And some of the, you know, some
in
of
terms
the,
of communication,
and some of
yes,
and some of the presidential candidates picked, you know, running mates who add value to their communication.
And some are picked who have not.
Like who
I would pick someone like Ronnie Osumba, who was picked by Peter Kenneth. Peter Kenneth is a systematic communicator. He's very good with logic, and he lacks, you know, sometimes he does not, he's very good with logic. Ronnie Osumba is a spirited communicator. I mean, this week I saw him talk about his story to a crowd in Kawangware, tell them that when he graduated from college, the first place that he lived in was Kawangware, and the crowd just connected. he brings that advantage to this particular ticket. On the issue of Raila and Kalonzo, Raila and Kalonzo was pretty good. I think Kalonzo is he comes across as a considerate communicator. He brings balance to
Who is
Raila's.
at disadvantage? You don't want to answer this question, Paul. I'm going to push it. Who is not helping who?
I mean, I've already told you that Kioni doesn't offer Musalia anything. And I think even Kiapi's running mate doesn't seem to say...
What would you say of Martha's?
Martha's running mate, I think that was also a disaster. Because I don't see the value. I think Uhuru, there are two people, Uhuru and Kalonzo, and Raila have chose some good running mates. I think these guys are adding value to them. But the rest of the pack, I haven't seen somebody who really comes out as striking as the two gentlemen. But let's not forget
as the Biden for Obama.
Let's not forget this point of Ruto. He could be communicating right now, but I hope that Jubilee and Accord are long-term projects for our country, and they will remain in place. Suppose Uhuru loses the election, will people still believe what Ruto has been saying, or they'll go back?
But more than that, do you think if there was a runoff, that Ruto would still be able to consolidate the Rift Valley base that he's supposed to bring in for Jubilee?
I think the Rift Valley what is already fractured, because if you look at what Kanu is doing, it is trying to pull out some parts of the Rift Valley. And I think if I were in Jubilee, some of the worries I would have is whether or not the Rift Valley vote is already assured. Because it seems the signals you get, especially at the top of the pack of presidential candidates, now that Musalia has also entered there, Raila is looking for votes, these people could cause a major election surprise and start voting for Ruto's people, and at the top choose other presidential candidates. Is Jubilee ready for this?
One interesting thought that you leave us on. Gentlemen, just quickly, your final comments. We're a month and a day away from this poll. What do you think we should hear from the presidential candidates in these very final days of campaigning?
I think issues. And we've talked about some of this, and we've talked about the communication styles of some of the candidates that we've seen. I think they all need to start pivoting and talking about the serious issues that are facing this country, and that will help them really communicate with a wider audience outside there.
All right.
The second thing, the thing that I want is these people the presidential candidates should talk about what is practical and what they can implement. Let them not promise us so much, and when we vote them in, they can't do that. For me, it's not just issue. As my brother is saying, there is only one major issue about this country. We must have a president that can bring reforms and implement this constitution, because it is the neutral document. Once it is implemented, people will know how to live together in harmony. Anybody who talks about changing Kenya without specifically looking at all the chapters of the constitution is just telling us hot air, and we are going nowhere.
I want them to project hope, because the Kenyan people are looking for hope right now. Hope at all levels. They have to be able to do that. I also want to see a leader who projects humility. I want to be able to see that. I also want to see the passion in them. And I want to also see them express some aspect of authenticity. I want to be able to look at them and believe what they're saying. And for those that have credibility gaps, I want them to narrow that gap. I want to see them credible. Well,
if I can quickly add, next week is the beauty pageant, where they can come and show us all of that. It's their chance, it really is. It's their chance to shine and give us all these things that you're talking about. Close the credibility gaps, show us that they have the humility, and show us that they have the energy and the vigor to take this country forward to where it deserves.
And you wrap it up beautifully, gentlemen. I don't think it could be better said. What we want to hear from politicians, and certainly hope that it is genuine, that it's coming from the heart, and it's something that they're going to implement. I want to thank you all for your time and for your thoughts. It's always great fun speaking to you. Time for us to take a short break on KTN Sunday Night. When we return, we've got all your sporting action.